The grand chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and light that held the fate of billions. Inside, representatives from 300 different species sat in their designated sections. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few were made of pure energy. But today, they all agreed on one thing. The Velim had to go. Elder Thal Nessa stood in the center of the chamber, her crystalline body reflecting the harsh lights in broken rainbows across the floor. She was old, even by Velim standards. Her form had taken on the deep purple hue that came with age, and small cracks ran through her structure like rivers on a map. She held her head high, but her voice carried the weight of sorrow. "We have shared what we could," she said, her words translating through the chamber's systems into 300 languages. "We have given freely of our knowledge in medicine, in agriculture, in the arts. But our energy synthesis is sacred to us. It is tied to our very being, to our souls. We cannot simply hand it over like a common trade good." A reptilian counselor from the Korthan Empire hissed his displeasure. "You hoard technology that could power entire worlds. While others starve for energy, you keep your gifts locked away. This is not the way of the Galactic Council." Thal Nessa's light dimmed. "It is not hoarding to protect what makes us who we are." But the vote had already been decided before she ever entered the chamber. The Galactic Council did not tolerate those who refused to share everything. One by one, the species cast their votes. The display showed the results in cruel clarity. 287 in favor of exile, 13 against. The Velim were alone. Far across the galaxy, Commander Day sat in the command chair of the UEN Horizon, a sleek destroyer that patrolled the outer edges of human space. He was a young man by military standards, only 32, but he had earned his position through skill and careful judgment. His dark eyes scanned the sensor displays with practiced efficiency. "Commander," his communications officer called out. "I'm picking up something strange. Multiple encrypted signals, but they're breaking up. The pattern is... I've never seen anything like it." Day leaned forward. "Can you clean it up?" The officer worked his console for several minutes before shaking his head. "Not much, but I can tell you this. Whoever is sending it is desperate, and they're close to our border." Day made his decision quickly. "Plot an intercept course. Full sensor sweep. I want to know what we're dealing with before we get there." The Horizon changed direction, its engines pushing it toward the source of the signals. 3 hours later, they found them. 50 ships hung in the void, and every one of them was dying. They were beautiful vessels, made of the same crystalline material as their creators, but their lights were flickering. Some were completely dark. As the horizon drew closer, Day could see bodies floating in space. Velim who had tried to make repairs and run out of time. "My God," breathed his first officer, a woman named Isul. "There must be thousands of them." 50,000, corrected the sensor officer. "I'm reading 50,000 life signs across the fleet. Most are weak." Day immediately opened a channel to Fleet Command. "This is Commander Day of the Horizon. I need to speak with Admiral Kang immediately." It took 20 minutes for the connection to route through to Earth. When Admiral Kang Mira's face appeared on the screen, she looked tired. She was a veteran of 40 years of service, with gray streaking through her black hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of too many hard decisions. "What is it, Commander?" Day explained the situation quickly and efficiently. When he finished, Kang was silent for a long moment. "The Galactic Council sent out a general notice 2 days ago," she finally said. "They exiled the Velim, forbid anyone from offering them aid or shelter. They said it was because of resource hoarding, but..." She trailed off. "With respect, Admiral, I don't care what the Council says. There are people dying out here." A small smile touched Kang's lips. "Good answer, Commander. Make contact. Offer assistance. I'll handle the politics. Day's communications officer established a link with the lead Valim ship. The image that appeared was heartbreaking. Thalnessa looked directly at him, and even through the alien features, he could see her exhaustion and fear. "Human vessel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am Elder Thalnessa of the Valim. We are in desperate need. Our ships are failing. We have sick and injured. We have children who are afraid. We have contacted 17 species asking for temporary refuge. All have turned us away." She paused, and her crystalline form seemed to dim further. "I do not expect you to be different, but I had to try." Day felt something twist in his chest. He had a daughter back on Earth, only 7 years old. He tried to imagine her afraid and alone in a dying ship, and the thought made him angry. "Elder Thalnessa," he said clearly. "I am Commander Day of the United Earth Navy. My admiral is contacting our government right now, but I can tell you this, we will not leave you to die. We're preparing to send medical teams and engineers to your ships immediately. Hold on just a little longer." Thalnessa's entire body flared with bright light for just a moment. You would help us? Even knowing the Council's decree?" "The Council isn't here," Day said simply. "We are." On Earth, in the sprawling complex that housed the United Government, Ambassador Hana stood before the Security Council. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she had a presence that filled rooms. She had been Earth's voice to the galaxy for 15 years, and she had never backed down from a fight. "They're refugees," she said, her voice calm but firm. 50,000 beings whose only crime was wanting to keep their cultural heritage intact. The Council is wrong, and if we turn our backs on them, then we're no better." The Security Council chairman, an older man named Hyun, frowned. "Ambassador, you know the consequences. The Council controls 40% of our trade routes. They supply us with materials we can't get anywhere else. If we defy them on this, then we find another way," Hana interrupted. "Humanity didn't claw its way up from nothing by abandoning our principles when things got hard. We helped them. Period." The vote took an hour. When it was done, Hana sent a single message to Admiral Kang. "Sanctuary granted. Bring them home." When Thalnessa received the news, she couldn't speak. For the first time in her 300-year life, she cried. Her tears fell as small crystal drops that chimed when they hit the floor. The Galactic Council's response came swiftly. The message was broadcast to all human territories. "By harboring the exiled Valim, humanity has violated Council law. Economic sanctions will begin immediately. All trade agreements are suspended. All military cooperation is terminated. Earth stands alone." On the horizon, Day read the message and smiled grimly. He looked out at the Valim fleet, at the lights that were starting to glow brighter now that human engineers were making repairs. "Let them sanction us," he said to Isul. "We've survived worse." Isul nodded. "What do you think will happen now?" Day watched as a small Valim child pressed her crystalline hand against a viewport, waving at the human ship. "I think," he said slowly, "that the galaxy is about to learn something important about humanity. We don't leave people behind. Ever." The Valim fleet began its journey toward Earth, escorted by 36 human warships. Behind them, the Galactic Council watched and waited. They thought humanity would break. They thought wrong. The first Valim ship touched down in the Arizona desert 3 weeks later. Dr. Jin stood at the edge of the landing zone, wearing a protective suit and carrying enough medical equipment to outfit a small hospital. He was a xenobiologist, one of the few humans who had studied alien physiology, but he had never actually met an alien in person. His hands were shaking. "Nervous?" asked his assistant, a young woman named Bora. Jin nodded. "Terrified. What if we get something wrong?" What if our environment kills them? Then we adapt, Bora said simply. That's what the briefing said. We learn together. The ship's door opened with a sound like wind chimes. The first Velim to emerge was Thalnessa. She moved slowly, carefully down the ramp. Earth's atmosphere was thicker than what she was used to, and the gravity pulled at her in unfamiliar ways. But when her crystalline feet touched the ground, she stopped and looked around with wonder. Jin stepped forward and removed his helmet. Bora gasped, but he ignored her. Elder Thalnessa, he said. Welcome to Earth. I'm Dr. Jin. I'm here to help make sure you and your people stay healthy. Thalnessa stared at him. You removed your protection? Is our presence not dangerous to you? Jin smiled. We tested the atmosphere inside your ship. You're not dangerous. And I wanted you to see my face when I said welcome, no barriers. The elder's glow brightened. Behind her, more Velim began to emerge. Some were strong enough to walk on their own. Others needed help. Jin's medical team moved forward immediately, not with fear, but with gentle efficiency. In Seoul, halfway across the world, Yuna was organizing the largest volunteer effort the city had ever seen. She was a social worker who had spent her whole career helping refugees, human refugees from climate disasters and economic collapses. But this was different. This was bigger. Okay, everyone listen up, she called out to the crowd of nearly 3,000 people packed into the community center. We have 500 Velim families arriving in Seoul next week. They need housing, they need food, they need help learning how to navigate our world. Who's in? Every hand went up. Yuna felt her throat tighten with emotion. All right, let's get to work. The preparation was intense. Humans didn't know what Velim ate, so volunteers prepared hundreds of different options. They didn't know what kind of housing the crystalline beings needed, so they built modular spaces that could be adjusted. They didn't know what temperature was comfortable, so they installed systems that could shift from freezing to tropical heat. When the Velim arrived, they were stunned. A young Velim named Kestal stepped off the transport ship and found himself surrounded by human children holding hand-drawn signs. "Welcome to Earth," they read. "We're happy you're here." One small girl, maybe 6 years old, ran up to him and held out a drawing of a crystalline figure holding hands with a human stick figure. "I made this for you," she said shyly. "You're pretty. Like a rainbow." Kestal had never felt his core glow so brightly. He carefully took the drawing with his crystalline hand and held it like it was made of the most precious material in the universe. "Thank you," he whispered. "I will treasure this forever." Yuna watched the scene and wiped away tears. Around her, families were opening their homes. An elderly couple was showing a Velim family how to use a kitchen. A group of teenagers was teaching young Velim how to play soccer, adjusting the rules so their crystalline bodies wouldn't shatter the ball. Everywhere she looked, there was kindness. "Is it always like this?" asked a Velim adult named Pelsora. "Your people, are they always so welcoming?" Yuna considered the question honestly. "No," she admitted. "Sometimes we fight. Sometimes we're afraid of what's different. But when it matters, when someone needs help, yeah, this is who we are." On Mars, in the engineering districts of the Red Planet's domed cities, Tae was having the time of his life. He was a structural engineer who had spent 20 years building habitats and life support systems. Now he was working alongside Velim technicians, and his mind was being blown daily. Wait, he said, examining a piece of Velim technology. "You're telling me this crystal naturally stores energy from starlight, without any conversion loss?" The Velim engineer, an older male named Vel Kron, made a sound like tinkling bells that translated as laughter. "Yes, it is how we have always done it. Is this not normal?" "Normal? This breaks about 6 laws of thermodynamics." Tae was grinning like a maniac. Okay. What if we combined this with our battery systems? We could create hybrid power cells that last 10 times longer than anything we currently have. Velcron's structure brightened. You wish to combine our methods? To learn from each other? Of course! Why wouldn't we? The Valem engineer was quiet for a moment. The council always demanded we simply give our technology. They never wanted to work with us. They wanted to take. Tay put down his tools and looked at Velcron seriously. We're not the council. We build things together here. Partners, not masters and servants. Word spread through the Valem community like wildfire. Humans weren't demanding anything. They were sharing their own knowledge freely. They were asking questions not to steal, but to understand. For a people who had been exiled for protecting their heritage, it was almost incomprehensible. But then something happened that changed everything. It was a warm day in the coastal city of Busan. A group of human children were playing near the water while their parents watched from the beach. Among them was a 7-year-old girl named Min, who loved swimming more than anything in the world. She went too far. A riptide caught her and pulled her under before anyone could react. Her mother screamed. Her father ran into the water, but the current was too strong. Kestal was walking along the beach with his Valem family, still marveling at Earth's oceans. He saw the girl go under. He didn't think. He just moved. His crystalline body cut through the water like a spear. The Valem could survive in vacuum. A little ocean water was nothing. He found Min in seconds, her small body already going limp. He grabbed her and surged back to the surface. On the beach, he laid her down and pressed his hands to her chest. His body began to glow, warm and steady. The energy flowed from him into her, gentle and controlled. It restarted her heart. She coughed up water and began to cry. Her parents pulled her into their arms, sobbing with relief. Then her mother turned to Kestal and hugged him too, crying into his crystalline shoulder. "Thank you," she wept. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." The moment was captured by a dozen phones. By that evening, the video had been viewed 1 billion times. The comments were overwhelming. "This is why we help them. They're not aliens, they're family. Anyone who wants them gone can fight me first." Public opinion, which had been supportive but cautious, became fiercely protective. When the Galactic Council's sanctions started to bite, when unemployment began to rise in sectors dependent on alien trade, people didn't blame the Valem. They blamed the Council, but the sanctions were real and they were hurting. Captain Wu stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser, reading the latest economic reports. Rare earth elements were becoming scarce. Medical facilities were running low on certain materials. Food production was stable, but some luxury items were completely unavailable. "Captain," his first officer said quietly, "there are protests in New Delhi and Lagos. People are struggling. Some are saying we should have never taken in the Valem." Wu's jaw tightened. "Some people always look for someone to blame. What's the actual percentage?" "About 15% of the population supports sending the Valem away. So 85% still support them." Wu nodded. "Then we stay the course." He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Captain Wu. I know things are getting hard. I know the sanctions are hurting. But let me remind you of something. When we found the Valem, they were dying. They had been turned away by 17 species. 17 different peoples looked at refugees and said, 'Not our problem.' We said something different. We said, 'Welcome home.' I don't know about you, but I'm not changing my answer now. We stand on our own feet, and we stand by our word. Wu out." The response from the fleet was immediate and unanimous. They were with him. On Earth, in her small apartment in Seoul, Yuna sat with Pelsora and her family. They were sharing a meal, kimchi stew that Yuna had made, and a crystalline food that the Valem had prepared that tasted like honey and starlight. "I am sorry," Pelsora said quietly. "We have brought you such trouble." Yuna reached across and touched the Velim's crystalline hand gently. "You didn't bring us trouble. The council brought us trouble. You brought us friends." "There's a difference." Pelsora's glow pulsed with emotion. "Why do you do this? Why sacrifice so much for strangers?" Yuna smiled. "You're not strangers anymore. You're neighbors. And we take care of our neighbors. That's just how it works." Outside, the city lights glowed against the night sky. In 1,000 homes across Earth, Luna, and Mars, humans and Velim sat together, ate together, and learned together. The galaxy had exiled the Velim, but humanity had given them something far more valuable than trade routes or council membership. Humanity had given them home. 6 months after the Velim arrived, the reality of the Galactic Council's sanctions became impossible to ignore. Sol stood in the control room of the Titan mining colony, staring at numbers that made his stomach hurt. He was responsible for keeping the colony running, for managing the extraction of titanium and rare Earth elements that Earth desperately needed. But the numbers were bad, really bad. "We're at 30% capacity," his deputy reported. "The drilling equipment is breaking down, and we can't get replacement parts. The council had exclusive contracts with the manufacturers." Sul rubbed his tired eyes. He had been awake for 20 hours straight. "What about the workarounds? The parts we're fabricating ourselves?" "They work, but they wear out fast. We need the council spec materials to make them last." The deputy hesitated. "Sul, the medical centers on Earth are starting to run low on supplies. The surgical equipment that needs our titanium, they're rationing it." That hit Sol like a punch. He thought of his sister, a surgeon in Tokyo. She had told him last week that they were having to choose which patients got the best equipment. People were dying who didn't have to. On Earth, the protests were getting larger. Yuna stood at the edge of a crowd of nearly 10,000 people in downtown Mumbai. They were angry, scared, and looking for someone to blame. The signs they carried made her heart ache. "Earth first! We can't feed aliens when our children are hungry! Send them back!" A man with a megaphone was shouting about unemployment, about shortages, about how the government had betrayed its own people for aliens. Some of what he said was true. Unemployment had risen to 12%. Some goods were scarce. Life was harder than it had been, but not all of it was because of the sanctions. Yuna pushed through the crowd and climbed onto a platform. She grabbed the megaphone from the surprised speaker. "My name is Yuna," she shouted. "I've been working with the Velim since they arrived. I want to tell you all something important. Yes, things are hard. Yes, we're struggling. But I've seen the Council's actual trade data. You know what? 60% of our economic problems right now have nothing to do with the sanctions. There was a fusion reactor malfunction in Geneva. There was a crop failure in Argentina from bad weather. There was a market crash because investors panicked. The Council wants us to blame the Velim for everything, so we'll give them up. Don't fall for it." Someone in the crowd shouted back, "Easy for you to say. You're not the one who lost your job." "You're right," Yuna said, her voice softer but still clear. "I haven't lost my job, but my brother has, and my neighbor, and my best friend. I know it's hard, but sending away 50,000 refugees won't bring those jobs back. The Council will still punish us for having defied them. All we'll have done is abandon people who needed us. Is that who we want to be?" The crowd was quieter now, uncertain. "The Velim didn't do this to us," Yuna continued. "They're victims too. They lost everything. Their homes, their rights, their place in the galaxy, all because they wanted to protect something sacred to them. And when we gave them shelter, we knew there would be a price. We chose to pay it. Don't let fear make us into the kind of people who throw others away when things get hard." She handed back the megaphone and climbed down. She didn't know if she had changed any minds, but at least she had tried. In the Velim settlement outside Geneva, Thalnessa called an emergency meeting of the elders. There were 12 of them, the oldest and wisest of their people. They gathered in a dome specially built for them, where the light was soft and the temperature was just right. "I have been thinking," Thalnessa said, her voice heavy with sadness. "Perhaps we should leave. The humans have suffered enough for our sake." The other elders glowed in distress. A younger elder named Kes Mora spoke up. "Where would we go? We have nowhere left." "Then perhaps we should return to the council," Thalnessa said quietly. "Perhaps we should give them what they want. Our technology, our knowledge, everything. If it means the humans can have peace, no." They all turned. Pelsora stood in the doorway, and she was not alone. Behind her were hundreds of Valim, young and old, and beside them were humans. Yuna was there. Dr. Jin was there. Tay was there with his engineering crew. "With respect, Elder," Pelsora said firmly, "we did not come all this way. We did not survive exile, just to surrender who we are. The council wanted to take our soul. We said no. We should not change that answer just because things are difficult." Yuna stepped forward. "Elder Thalnessa, we didn't take you in thinking it would be easy. We did it because it was right. Don't insult us by leaving now." Before Thalnessa could respond, alarms began blaring across the settlement. Dr. Jin grabbed his communicator. His face went pale. "What is it?" Thalnessa asked. "It's a journalist named Ari," Jin said slowly. "She says she has evidence about why the council really exiled you." Ari had been investigating for months. She was a young journalist who had cut her teeth exposing corruption in corporate boardrooms. But this was bigger than anything she had ever touched. She stood in her small apartment in Seoul, surrounded by screens displaying documents, communications, and data she had pulled from a dozen different sources. Some had been leaked to her. Some she had found through careful digging. And some had been given to her by council species who were disgusted by what they had learned. The truth was stunning. The council had not exiled the Valim for hoarding technology. They had exiled them because the Valim refused to be absorbed. The council's long-term plan was to integrate the Valim completely, to take their energy synthesis technology and mass-produce it, to turn something sacred into a commodity. When the Valim said no, when they insisted on keeping their cultural identity, the council decided to make an example of them. The leaked communications were damning. Council members discussing how to break the Valim, how to manufacture a crisis that would force them to submit, how exiling them would make other species think twice before refusing council demands. It was not about resources. It was about control. Ari took a deep breath and uploaded everything to the Galactic Network. Every document, every communication, every piece of evidence. She broadcasted on every channel, every frequency, every platform she could access. The galaxy exploded. Within hours, the news was everywhere. Species that had voted to exile the Valim were scrambling to respond. Some claimed ignorance. Some tried to justify their actions, but the evidence was too clear, too damning. On Earth, Ambassador Hana stood before the cameras and spoke to the entire galaxy. "The Galactic Council told you that the Valim were resource hoarders," she said, her voice calm but cutting. "They lied. The Council tried to steal the cultural heritage of an entire species. And when they refused, the Council destroyed them. And you all went along with it. Every species that voted for exile, every species that turned away their ships, you all chose power over principle." She paused, letting that sink in. "Humanity chose differently. We will not apologize for that. We will not regret it. And we will not forget which species stood with us and which species stood with tyrants." The message hit like a bomb. Across the galaxy, populations began demanding answers from their governments. Why had they supported the exile? Why had they trusted the council without question? Protests erupted on 100 worlds, but Hana was not done. In the Valem settlement, Thal Nessa made her own decision. She called for Yuna, for Dr. Jin, for Tai, and for every human who had worked alongside her people. "You have given us everything," she said. "Your homes, your food, your protection. You have asked for nothing in return, but we wish to give you something anyway. Not as payment, not as debt, but as family helping family." Dr. Yoon was a physicist who had spent her career studying energy systems. When the Valim showed her their technology, her eyes went wide. This is incredible," she whispered, examining the crystalline matrix that could absorb and store energy from any light source with perfect efficiency. "If we could integrate this with our solar arrays, with our fusion reactors, we could solve our energy problems forever." Velkron, the Valem engineer who had worked with Tai, nodded. "We wish to share this with you. Freely. Completely. We will teach you not just how to use it, but how to make it, how to adapt it to your needs." "But this is sacred to you," Yoon protested. "Your heritage. Our heritage is not diminished by sharing it with friends," Thal Nessa said gently. "It is honored. You saved us when we had nothing. Now we have something to give back." The work began immediately. Human scientists and Velim technicians working side by side, combining alien biology with human engineering. The first prototype hybrid power cell was ready in 2 weeks. It was 10 times more efficient than anything humanity had ever created. The second prototype was even better. Sewell, still working in the Titan mining colony, received the schematics for new mining equipment powered by the hybrid cells. He stared at the numbers in disbelief. This will let us run at 150% capacity," he said to his deputy. "With half the maintenance needs. We won't just match our old output. We'll exceed it." Similar reports came in from across human space. Factories that had been struggling could now operate independently. Medical facilities could power advanced equipment without rationing. Ships could fly farther and faster than ever before. The sanctions that had been choking Earth's economy were becoming irrelevant. Yuna stood with Pel Sora, watching the news reports of Earth's economic recovery. Human Valem technology was spreading across every industry. Unemployment was dropping. Production was rising. "You saved us twice," Yuna said softly. "Once from the Council's lies, and once from our own despair." Pelsora's crystalline form glowed warm and bright. "No, we saved each other. That is what family does." On her command ship, Admiral Kang Mira read the latest intelligence reports and allowed herself a small smile. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Member species were questioning everything. Trade alliances were fracturing. And humanity, written off as weak and isolated, was thriving. She opened a secure channel to Ambassador Hana. "The Council is sending a fleet," she said without preamble. "They're calling it a peacekeeping mission. But we both know what it really is." Hana's expression did not change. "How long do we have?" 3 weeks. Maybe 4. "Then we'd better be ready." Hana closed the channel and looked out at the Earth below. Somewhere down there, humans and Valim were living together, working together, building something new. The Council wanted to crush that, to restore order, to remind everyone who held the power. But Hana had a different plan. She picked up her communicator and sent a message to every human captain, every human colony, every human settlement. "Stand ready, they're coming, but we're not alone anymore, and we're done being afraid." The price of compassion had been high, but humanity had paid it willingly. And now, they were about to show the galaxy that kindness was not weakness. It was the strongest foundation any civilization could build upon. 1 year after the Valim arrived, everything had changed. Commander Day stood on the bridge of a ship that did not exist a year ago. The UEN Unity was a new class of vessel, designed from the ground up as a collaboration between human engineers and Velim technicians. Its hull was reinforced with crystalline matrices that could absorb and redistribute energy from weapon impacts. Its engines used hybrid power cells that could run for years without refueling. Its weapon systems were faster and more precise than anything the Council had. It was beautiful, and it was just one of 30 identical ships. "All systems green," his tactical officer reported. "The fleet is ready, Commander." Day nodded. But they were not preparing for war. They were preparing for something else entirely. On Earth, in the diplomatic halls of Geneva, Ambassador Hana was hosting visitors that no one had expected. Representatives from the Korthan Empire, the Mindari Collective, and the Philox Assembly had arrived quietly, without fanfare or official announcements. They were species that the Galactic Council considered minor, unimportant. They had small territories, limited resources, and little political power. The Council mostly ignored them, except when it wanted something from them. Now they sat in Hana's office, looking nervous but hopeful. The Korthan representative, a reptilian female named Sesrik, spoke first. "Ambassador, we have watched what you did for the Velim, how you stood against the Council, how you built something new together." She paused, her clawed hands gripping the armrests of her chair. "We want that too. The Council takes from us. They demand tribute, demand resources, demand obedience, but they give nothing back. We are tired of being small and ignored." The Mindari representative, a being of flowing liquid held in a containment suit, added his own voice. "You have shown that there is another way. Partnership instead of domination. Sharing instead of taking. We wish to learn from you, to work with you." Hana leaned forward. "What you're asking for is not small. If you align with us, the Council will punish you the same way they punished us." "We know," said the Philox representative, a insectoid creature with compound eyes that reflected the light in rainbow patterns. "But we have been punished for years just by being weak. At least this way, we choose our own path." Hana felt something warm spread through her chest. This was what she had hoped for. Not just survival, but something bigger. Something that could change the galaxy. "Then welcome," she said simply. "Welcome to the Free Worlds Coalition." The news spread like wildfire. 3 species had broken away from the Galactic Council to join humanity and the Velim. It was not a large number, but it was a start. And the Council was furious. On the Council station, the emergency session was chaos. Representatives were shouting, arguing, pointing fingers at each other. How had this happened? How had humanity, isolated and sanctioned, managed to build alliances? The reptilian counselor who had pushed for the Velim exile was screaming the loudest. "This is an act of rebellion! We must crush it before it spreads!" But an older counselor, a gaseous being from the Telmara Consortium, spoke more carefully. "Perhaps we have been too harsh. Perhaps if we offer humanity a compromise—" "Compromise," the reptilian counselor hissed. "They defied us. They harbor criminals. They must be made an example of." The vote was close, but in the end, fear won over wisdom. The Council authorized a battle fleet to travel to human space. Their mission was to restore order and protect Council interests. Everyone knew what that really meant. Admiral Kang Mira received the intelligence reports 3 days before the Council fleet entered human space. 140 ships. Battle cruisers, destroyers, carrier vessels. It was the largest military force the Council had deployed in 50 years. She called a meeting of all human military commanders, plus representatives from the Velim and the 3 new coalition species. "They're coming to intimidate us," Kang said, her voice steady. "They think we'll see their fleet and surrender. Give up the Velim. Abandon our new allies. Go back to being obedient little humans who do what we're told." Captain Wu leaned forward. "What are our orders, Admiral?" Kang smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We meet them at the edge of our territory. We show them what we've built, and we make them an offer." Wu raised an eyebrow. "An offer? Watch and learn, Captain." The Council fleet arrived in human space with all the arrogance of unquestioned power. Their formation was designed to look impressive, overwhelming. The flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Sovereign Authority, took point position. They expected to find scattered human ships, maybe a few dozen at most, desperate, afraid. Instead, they found 96 vessels waiting for them in perfect formation. The new Unity-class ships gleamed in the starlight, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of a nearby star. Beside them flew Valem crystal ships that had been upgraded with human weapons and shields, Korthan frigates with hybrid engines, Mindari scouts with advanced sensors, Felox carriers loaded with fighter craft. It was a fleet that should not have been possible. On the Sovereign Authority, the Council admirals stared at the display in shock. Where did they get those ships? How? His tactical officer was equally stunned. "Admiral, I'm reading energy signatures I've never seen before. Their power output is... It's 3 times higher than our equivalent vessels." The Council Admiral regained his composure. They still had numbers. "Open a channel. Let's remind these humans of their place." But before he could speak, Captain Wu opened a channel first. His face appeared on every screen in the Council fleet. "Council fleet, this is Captain Wu of the Free Worlds Coalition. You are approaching the sovereign territory of free peoples. You are not welcome here. I strongly suggest you turn around." The Council Admiral's face flushed with anger. "You dare threaten us? You are in violation of—" "We're not threatening you," Wu interrupted calmly. "We're stating facts. You came here to intimidate us, to make us afraid. But we're not afraid anymore. You see these ships? We built them together. Humans, Valem, Korthan, Mindari, Felox. All working as equals, all sharing freely, all stronger together than we ever were apart." He paused and his expression softened. "You came here expecting to find weakness. Instead, you found unity. You came here to restore order. But we don't want your order anymore. It's built on fear and control. We're building something different, something better." On the Sovereign Authority, the Council Admiral was about to respond with threats, with demands for submission. But then something unexpected happened. One of his own ships, a destroyer from the Mindari homeworld, broke formation. Then another, a Felox cruiser. Then a Korthan battleship. The Admiral watched in horror as ships began turning away, refusing to fight. Their crews were sending messages. "We will not fire on our own people. The Council does not speak for us. We stand with the Coalition." Within an hour, the Council fleet had lost 23 ships to defection. The crews had simply refused to fight against their own species members who had joined the Coalition. Wu watched it happen and felt a surge of hope. "Council Admiral," he said quietly, "we don't want war. We never did. We just want to be free. Free to choose our friends. Free to help those in need. Free to build something that treats everyone with dignity. You can fight us, but you'll lose more than ships. You'll lose the respect of every species watching this right now." The Council Admiral looked at his fleet, at the ships that remained loyal, and at the Coalition fleet that waited calmly. They were not in attack formation. They were not charging weapons. They were just waiting. He could order an attack. He could start a war. But he would be fighting against people defending their homes. He would be attacking refugees. He would be the villain in a story that the entire galaxy was watching. "Retreat," he said quietly. Then, louder. "All ships, fall back to Council space." The Council fleet turned and left. They did not fire a single shot. On the Unity, Day let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. Around him, his crew was cheering. They had won without fighting. They had shown strength without violence. "Captain Wu," Day called over the comm. "That was brilliant." Wu's voice came back tired but satisfied. "We didn't win by being stronger, Commander. We won by being better." There's a difference. On Earth, the celebrations were massive. Streets filled with people dancing, singing, crying with relief. Humans hugged Velim. Korthan, Mendari, and Phalok's representatives were lifted onto shoulders and carried through crowds. Yuna stood with Pelsora and her family, watching the celebration in Seoul. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Pelsora's crystalline form glowed so brightly it lit up the entire street. "No, you did it. You humans. You could have abandoned us at any time. You could have chosen the easy path, but you did not. You taught us that compassion is not weakness. It is the foundation of everything strong." In Geneva, Ambassador Hana met with the diplomatic teams from 14 more species. They had watched the standoff. They had seen the Council fleet retreat. They had seen a different way of doing things, and they wanted in. "The Free Worlds Coalition is not an empire," Hana told them. "We don't demand tribute. We don't require obedience. What we ask is that you treat your partners with respect, that you share freely, that you help those in need. Can you do that?" Every representative said yes. Nari, Earth's chief negotiator, worked with teams from 20 different species to draft the founding document of the new coalition. They called it the Principles of Shared Prosperity. It was simple. No species shall dominate another. All shall share what they can. All shall receive what they need. Decisions shall be made together. No one shall be left behind. It was not complicated, but it was revolutionary. Dr. Yoon and her teams were working around the clock now, helping new coalition species adapt human Valium hybrid technology to their own needs. The Korthan used it to purify their polluted oceans. The Mindari used it to stabilize their dying star. The Phalok's used it to terraform a barren moon into farmland, and all of it was shared freely. No patents, no exclusive rights, just knowledge flowing from one species to another. Tay stood in a workshop with engineers from 8 different species. They were designing a new type of space station that could serve as a hub for trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Everyone contributed ideas. Everyone's input mattered equally. "You know what's amazing?" Tay said to Velcrone. 6 months ago, we were struggling just to survive the sanctions. Now we're building things the Council never dreamed of. Velcrone's chime-like laugh filled the workshop. Perhaps this is what happens when people work together instead of against each other. Perhaps this is what the galaxy could have been all along, if only the Council had chosen a different path. Back on the Galactic Council station, the mood was dark. They had lost face, lost ships, lost species. The vote that had once been 287 against 13 had flipped. Now, over 60% of the species that had been in the Council were gone, having joined the Free Worlds Coalition. The few that remained were the ones who benefited most from the old system. The powerful, the controlling, the ones who had built empires on the backs of the weak. They were furious, but they were also afraid. Because for the first time in centuries, they were no longer the ones who decided how the galaxy worked. Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at the stars. Captain Wu's words echoed in her mind. "We won by being better." She thought about what came next. The Council would not give up easily. There would be more conflicts, more challenges. But now, humanity was not alone. They had allies who believed in the same principles, who valued kindness over cruelty, who understood that true strength came from lifting others up, not pushing them down. "Ma'am," her communications officer said, "we're receiving a message. It's from the Telmara Consortium. They're one of the species still in the Council." Kang raised an eyebrow. What do they want? The officer smiled. They're asking to join the coalition. Kang felt a grin spread across her face. Accept their application and send a message to all coalition species. Tell them to get ready. We're about to get a lot bigger. The galaxy was changing, and humanity, once small and alone, was leading the way. 5 years had passed since the Velim fleet first appeared in human space, dying and desperate. 5 years since humanity had made the choice to help them, despite the cost. Now everything was different. Dr. Jin walked through the halls of the Unity Academy on Earth's moon. The facility was enormous, built into the lunar surface with sections designed for every kind of biology imaginable. Oxygen breathers mixed with methane breathers. Species that needed intense gravity trained alongside those that preferred zero-G. Crystalline Velim studied next to liquid Mindari, reptilian Corthan, insectoid Felox, and humans. This was the first class of coalition ambassadors. Young beings from 40 different species, learning together, training together, preparing to carry the principles of the coalition out into the galaxy. Jin stopped to watch a training session. A young human named Juan was working with a Velim named Kestal on a diplomatic scenario. They had been paired as partners, meant to learn to think as one unit despite their completely different biologies and cultures. The situation is tense, their instructor was saying. 2 species are on the brink of war over a resource dispute. What do you do? Juan spoke first. We don't take sides. We listen to both. Find out what they really need, not just what they're demanding. Kestal continued the thought seamlessly. Then we look for solutions that serve both needs. Perhaps they do not need to fight over the resource. Perhaps there is a way to share it, or to find an alternative. The instructor nodded approvingly. And if they refuse to negotiate? Then we remain neutral but present, Juan said. We do not abandon either side. We stay and keep talking. Sometimes just having witnesses who care can change behavior. Jin smiled. These young people understood. They had grown up in a galaxy transformed by the choice humanity and the Velim had made together. They did not remember the old council's iron rule. They only knew the coalition's way of partnership and mutual support. This was the future. On Earth, in the city of Seoul, Yuna's granddaughter played in a park that existed in multiple gravitational zones. In one section, human children played soccer. In another, Velim children created crystalline sculptures that caught the sunlight. In a third, young Felox practiced flying in the low-gravity environment their species preferred, but the zones blended together. Human children helped Velim children with their sculptures. Velim children joined the soccer games, learning to be careful with their harder bodies. Felox children swooped down to catch flying balls and return them to the players. It was chaotic. It was beautiful. It was normal. Yuna watched from a bench, sitting next to Pelsora. Both of them had aged in the past 5 years. Yuna's hair had gone completely gray. Pelsora's crystalline form had deepened to the rich purple of advanced age. But they still met here every week. 2 old friends watching the children play. Do you remember when we first met? Pelsora asked, her voice like soft wind chimes. I was so afraid. So certain that you would turn us away like everyone else. Yuna laughed. I remember you asking me why we would sacrifice so much for strangers. You know what I realized? We were not sacrificing for strangers. We were investing in friends we had not met yet. Pelsora's glow pulsed warmly. Your people changed everything, Yuna. Not just for the Velim, for the entire galaxy. Do you understand that? Before you, the galaxy ran on fear and power. Now it runs on hope and partnership. We did not do it alone, Yuna said softly. Your people gave us the tools. The other species gave us the courage. We all did this together. Far across the galaxy, in what used to be exclusively Galactic Council space, something remarkable was happening. The Council still existed. 12 species remained loyal to the old system, unwilling or unable to change. They controlled their own territories, maintained their own fleets, enforced their own rules. But they were no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. The Free Worlds Coalition had grown to encompass 187 species. More than 60% of the known galaxy now operated under the principles of shared prosperity. Trade flourished. Technology spread freely. When disasters struck, help came immediately from dozens of worlds. When conflicts arose, mediators trained at the Unity Academy stepped in to find peaceful solutions. It was not perfect. There were still disputes, still problems, still species that struggled. But the fundamental nature of galactic society had shifted. Cooperation had replaced domination, and the Council was dying. Ambassador Hana, now an elderly woman with white hair and a cane, stood before the Council's delegation in the same diplomatic hall where she had first offered sanctuary to the Valem. But this time, she was not asking for permission. She was receiving a request. The 12 remaining Council species had sent their representatives to Earth. They looked uncomfortable, some ashamed, others defiant, but desperate. The reptilian counselor who had pushed hardest for the Valem exile spoke. He was older now, too, his scales dulling with age. "Ambassador," he said stiffly, "we come to request membership in the Free Worlds Coalition." Hana did not show any emotion. "Why?" "Because—" The counselor struggled with the words. "Because the old way is not working. Our economies are stagnant. Our people are leaving to join coalition worlds. We have power, but no purpose. We have control, but no trust." Another counselor, the Telmara, who had questioned the Valem exile from the beginning, added more honestly, "We were wrong, Ambassador Hana. We chose fear over compassion. We chose control over cooperation. And we have spent 5 years watching you build something better, something we should have built ourselves." Hana looked at each of them in turn. She thought about what to say. Part of her wanted to make them suffer, to make them beg, to remind them of every species they had hurt, every exile they had enforced, every act of cruelty they had committed in the name of order. But that was not the coalition way. "Do you accept the principles of shared prosperity?" she asked simply. "Yes. Will you share your knowledge and resources freely with all coalition species?" "Yes. Will you help those in need even when there is no benefit to yourselves?" The reptilian counselor bowed his head. "Yes, we will try. We may not always succeed. Our ways are old, but we will try." Hana was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Then you are welcome here. No conditions, no demands. You are safe here." It was the same phrase Earth had used for the Valem 5 years ago. The circle was complete. The news spread across the galaxy instantly. The Galactic Council, the organization that had ruled with an iron fist for centuries, had dissolved. Every species was now part of the Free Worlds Coalition. The galaxy was united, not by force, not by fear, but by choice. On his flagship, Admiral Day looked at his first officer, Isol, who had been with him since that first encounter with the dying Valem fleet. "I never thought I would see this," he said quietly. "A galaxy at peace." Isol smiled. "Not peace, sir. We still have conflicts. We still have problems. But we have a framework for solving them that does not involve domination and exile." "That's close enough to peace for me," Day said. In her laboratory, Dr. Yun was working with a team that included humans, Valem, and 8 other species. They were developing new terraforming technology that could make barren worlds habitable, not for profit, not for expansion, but because there were refugee populations that needed homes, and the coalition believed everyone deserved a safe place to live. The technology would be shared freely, as all coalition technology was. Tay, now a senior engineer, oversaw the construction of the 7th Coalition Hub Station. These massive structures served as gathering places, trade centers, cultural exchanges, and emergency shelters. They existed in neutral space, belonging to everyone and no one. Every species had contributed to the design. Every species had crews working on construction. When it was finished, it would be a monument not to any one people, but to what could be accomplished together. Captain Wu, promoted to admiral, trained the next generation of coalition fleet officers, but the training was different now. Less focus on tactics and weapons, more focus on diplomacy and crisis response. Your primary mission, he told his students, is not to fight. It is to protect, to rescue, to help. The fleet exists to serve, not to conquer. One young officer, a Corthan female, raised her hand. But Admiral, what if someone attacks us? Wu smiled. Then we defend ourselves. We are not pacifists, but we are not aggressors either. We use force only when there is no other choice. And even then, we use the minimum necessary. Because every being we hurt is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Violence should always be the last option, never the first. The old Galactic Council had built a military to dominate. The Coalition built a fleet to serve. In the Valem settlement on Earth, now a permanent city rather than a temporary refuge, Elder Thal Nessa gathered the community for an announcement. She was very old now, nearly 400 years. Her crystalline form was the deep, rich purple of ancient Valem, shot through with cracks that glowed with inner light. "My children," she said to the thousands gathered, "when we came to this world, we were dying. We had been rejected by everyone. We had lost hope. The humans could have turned us away. They owed us nothing. But they did not. They welcomed us." She paused, her light pulsing with emotion. "We thought we were being saved. But I have come to realize something. We did not just receive sanctuary. We participated in a transformation. Humanity showed us that compassion was possible. And we, in turn, helped them show the galaxy that compassion was powerful. Together, we changed everything." The crowd of Valem, humans, and dozens of other species cheered. "I am old," Thal Nessa continued. "I will not live many more years, but I die happy, knowing that my people are safe, that they have a home, that they are loved, and that the galaxy is better than it was." She looked directly at a group of young Valem and human children sitting together. "You are the future. You will never know the fear we knew. You will never understand what it was like to be rejected by an entire galaxy. But I hope you will remember the lessons we learned. That kindness is strength. That compassion builds more than cruelty ever could. That no one should ever be left behind." The children nodded solemnly, not fully understanding but sensing the importance of her words. Ambassador Hana stood at the grand opening of the Galactic Memorial. It was a structure built on a neutral world, designed to remember all those who had suffered under the old council's rule, the exiled, the oppressed, the forgotten. At the center was a statue of a human and a Valem, standing together, reaching out to help others rise. "This memorial is not just about the past," Hana said in her speech. "It is about the present and the future. It reminds us that we must always choose compassion over convenience, that we must always help those in need, even when it costs us, that we must always stand for what is right, even when it is hard." She touched the base of the statue, where words were engraved in every coalition language. "They called us soft for showing mercy. We showed them that compassion is the strongest foundation for any civilization." It was Commander Day's words from 5 years ago. They had become the unofficial motto of the Coalition. That night, across the galaxy, beings from 187 different species looked up at the stars, and felt something that had been missing for too long. Hope. Not because there were no more problems, not because everything was perfect, but because they knew that if they fell, someone would help them rise. If they struggled, someone would share their burden. If they were lost, someone would welcome them home. On Earth, young Juan graduated from the Unity Academy with honors. He and his partner Kestal were assigned to the border regions, where new species were still being discovered and welcomed into the coalition. On the Valim homeworld, finally returned to them after years of exile, the crystalline cities glowed with light and life. Valim, who had been scattered across the galaxy, came home. But they came home changed, bringing with them friends from dozens of species, sharing their world freely with those who had shared theirs. On the 7th hub station, the final section was completed. Representatives from every coalition species gathered for the dedication ceremony. They did not celebrate the station itself. They celebrated what it represented: unity, cooperation, and the belief that together, anything was possible. Yuna, very old now and confined to a wheelchair, attended with Pelsora beside her. They watched the young people dancing, celebrating, mixing together in joyful chaos. "We did good," Yuna said softly. "We did," Pelsora agreed. "We saved each other, and in doing so, we saved the galaxy." Somewhere in deep space, on a patrol route along the Coalition's edge, a young captain received a distress signal. An unknown ship, damaged and dying. A species not yet encountered. The captain did not hesitate. "All hands, prepare for rescue operations. Helm, set an intercept course." When they found the ship, the beings aboard were frightened. They had heard stories of great powers that enslaved the weak. They expected the worst. Instead, the captain opened a channel and said the words that had become standard across the coalition. "This is Captain Ray of the Free Worlds Coalition. We received your distress call. You're safe now. We're here to help. No conditions, no demands. Welcome." The cycle that had begun with humanity and the Velim continued, compassion spreading outward like ripples in a pond, each act of kindness inspiring another, each choice to help instead of harm making the galaxy a little bit better. It had started with one decision, one species choosing to help another, despite the cost. And it had changed everything. In the park on Earth, children of a dozen different species played together under the stars. Human and Valim, Korthan and Mindari, Felox and Telmara, and countless others. They did not see differences. They only saw friends. And in that simple truth lay the future of the galaxy, a future built not on power, but on compassion, not on fear, but on hope, not on division, but on the understanding that everyone deserves kindness, everyone deserves help, and no one, absolutely no one, should ever be left behind. Humanity had been called soft for welcoming the exiled. They had been called foolish for sacrificing their own comfort. They had been called naive for believing in compassion. They had proven all of those labels wrong. Because in the end, the strongest civilizations are not the ones that conquer. They are the ones that care.